Hello, my name is Tylluan Penry. I'm a solitary pagan witch, I'm an author and the founder of the Wolf and Howl Press. And today's little chat is going to be about the ethics of witchcraft. Now, this is a touchy one because witchcraft is often mixed up with Wicca, which is rather different, and witchcraft does not have to obey the tenets of Wicca. So let's get that out of the way to start with. When I talk about ethics, what I'm saying is how do we guide ourselves? You know, my father said to me years ago, well, if you don't accept discipline, because I was a very unruly girl, if you don't accept discipline, he said, you've got to learn self-discipline. And he's absolutely right. You do have to discipline yourself. And it's actually the hardest way to do it. It's much easier to listen to people telling you what to do and just do it. You know, this is how many orthodox established religions have got by over the years. They've got by because they just tell people what to do and they listen. But of course, with something like witchcraft, it's more difficult, especially when you're a solitary. Who are you going to have tell you what to do? Are they sound? Should they be telling you what to do? These are all questions we need to ask ourselves before we accept what anyone else says. And that goes for me too. I don't expect you to believe everything I say. I expect you to question it, to test it, to find out for yourselves. I believe what I'm telling you is quite correct, but you should test it for yourselves. Anyway, when we come down to things like ethics, what are the rules that govern us over things like, when we cast a spell? There are people who say you should never cast a spell without someone else's permission. Okay, when are they old enough to give permission? There's nothing on that, you know. Is a 3-month-old baby old enough to give permission? Oh, their parents give permission. Right, okay. When does the child become old enough to give permission? What if the parents give permission and the child doesn't? What about somebody who is very sick, who's perhaps unconscious? They can't give permission, so who does it then? It's all about using common sense, really, and not muscling in and thinking we know best. That's another one. Sometimes I think we need to just entrust someone's well-being to the gods or the higher powers or the universe or whatever you want to call it, whatever you follow. And again, you see, we're all different. So sometimes you just do what I call an entrusting spell and you just hope for the best. Hope that whoever is out there and listening and takes an interest in that particular person is going to do something about it. And accept that sometimes they won't. You know, we've had a lot of disasters of one sort and another in the past couple of years in the world. And, you know, some of these pastors, especially in North America, they're very fond of saying who they blame for all this. You know, I blame this group. No, I blame that group. This is why we've had a hurricane. Well, the Anglo-Saxons had a very good word for it. They called it Wyrd. W-Y-R-D. And basically it was a kind of fate, an inescapable fate. In other words, it was shit happens on a spiritual scale. And you know, it's a funny thing, I can actually live with that. Shit happens. Yes, it does. And it happens to nice people as well as nasty people. Sometimes we just can't get the grips with it. We don't know why it happens. There may be a higher plan. It may be just nobody's listening. Who knows? But the point is, we are trying our best. And we are desperately trying to find a way that will enable us to act without sitting there for hours wondering what to do. You know, when you're starting out, people will say, you mustn't do a spell without permission. And you can agonise about this for hours and hours. Whether you've got someone's permission. Is it right that someone knows you're going to do a spell on their behalf? What about a hex? I mean, people do hexes and I'm pretty certain they don't ask for permission. And hexes are highly effective in many occasions. So it's not always true. It's a little bit like asking permission. Yes, that's fine. It's nice, it's polite, but sometimes it's not practical. I think with hexes, you know, people say you should never hex. It'll come back and get you. The threefold law and all this other stuff. Now look, there are times when people hex because they're nasty. They're nasty in real life. Their magic is nasty. Every damn thing about them is nasty. Fine, they're nasty people. They do nasty magic. But there are people who do a hex because there are no other options available to them. And I know somebody's going to write and say, oh yes, there's always another option. No, there isn't. There are times when there are no other options that are available. And maybe, you see, if it makes that person feel better, even if the hex didn't work, if it made the person who cast it feel better for having done something to stand up for themselves, well then maybe it was the right thing to do. You know, these are ethics. These are things we have to ask ourselves. You know, is it right to bring up our children as pagans? I think it's nice to introduce them to paganism. It's nice to show them what it's all about. But I would no more want to see them forced into paganism than I would want to force somebody into anything else. I think everything has to be made free will and a choice. You have to have a choice. And that choice includes being able to say no if you want to. And even though we may not understand it, I think we just have to accept it. That too is part of our ethics, part of our outlook on life. So I hope this chat is helpful. I hope it makes you think. I hope it helps you create your own ethics as you go through life and you work your way along your path. And I do hope you've enjoyed it. And thank you for listening. Goodbye.